All right, now we come to framing. And when we talk about photo composition, we say the word framing. This is when we create a pseudo frame within our photograph. So whatever, we have stuff on the edges of our photograph that are actually in the scene itself. So let's take a look. This would be an example of framing a photograph with that archway, right? It creates a mini frame within our photograph itself. So there's nothing kind of just jutting off into the edge of the photograph. Everything is self-contained. And this helps again with focal point because creating this natural frame naturally guides our eye to what's inside of the frame. Here's another example of a rock face making a frame all the way around. We have the top arch here and the walls of this arch, and then we have the ground itself creates a frame, and that helps guide our eye to what's on the inside of it. Right? Let's see if I can scroll back to that other example of the cave. Where is that? This one. This is framed as well. You could kind of argue this is a little bit framed, but not nearly as explicitly as these couple photos are. And here's a picture that I took of one of my books trying to show this framing effect. It doesn't have to be things in the foreground, right? This frame, this rock face is in the foreground, which means it's closest to the camera compared to everything else, right? The sky, everything in the distance is the background. This rock structure is the midground, and this frame is in the foreground. Same thing with here. This archway is in the foreground. It's what's closest to the camera. Then you got the plaza, which is kind of the midground, and you have the sky and these buildings, which is more the background. Whereas here, the frame is pretty much the background, right? So my subject would be my book here, and this was taken in a castle in Wales. I think I have a picture, just to show you some context for what this is. This is what's called, I don't know what it's actually called, but it's basically a little window that you would use when defending this castle with a bow and arrow. So it's wide enough for you to look through and get your bow in there and start shooting arrows out, but not wide enough for them to shoot arrows in. This wasn't an actual photograph. I think I was taking this just to test out my settings. But for this, you can actually see we got some framing of that arrow window on each side. The plant itself kind of helps with a little bit of a frame, you could argue. And we have the actual windowsill here that frames the bottom of the image. The only thing about this image, it doesn't have a frame for the top. So you can start to see the vines or the leaves just kind of end abruptly. They just go out of the frame of the photo here. And same with the actual window itself. It just there's nothing containing that. Now that being said, not every photo needs to be framed, right? But a well-framed photo can make it stand out. It can change the difference between just a random snapshot you take on your phone and a high-quality photograph.